Hey folks, I know we haven't done a shoe review in a while. Um, I've been busy um, with tariff craziness and client work. Traveled to China and Ecuador. We haven't done a shoe review, and I've got a whole grip of shoes that we're going to be looking at. But today, we're going to do Nike versus Nike. But before we get the video started, I just want to tell you that this video is brought to you by the book How Shoes Are Made. If you're getting started in footwear and you just want to see really what goes on, then this is your sort of starter kit for what goes on inside of a shoe factory, and just basically kind of how things are put together. In the back of this, pretty importantly, is a big dictionary of shoe terms so that you can learn and speak with authority on what the correct names for all these parts are. So again, if you want to get started, how shoes are made, have a look at that. It's on the website. You can get it on Amazon also. Okay, so this video is kind of a Nike versus Nike, and this is a pair of shoes. I'm sorry, we're not cutting shoes today. This is a pair of shoes that the young and lovely Miss Shoemakers Academy brought into the house. She's preparing a nice summer vacation, and she wanted a comfortable, lightweight pair of shoes to wear. And she brought home the Nike Waffle Debut. Now, when I first saw these, I was like, "Wow, okay, we got some, retro, retro mod sneakers." So, and it reminded me a lot of a shoe that we've talked about on the channel a lot because it's sort of that classic functional vintage style, the Nike Daybreak. So when I saw the shoe here, I thought, okay, I want to compare it to this. So that's what I say, Nike versus Nike, because we're going to look at some old and new here today. And let's get this out, and we are gonna do a little compare and contrast. So that's what we got today. So I really like this kind of shoe, and I don't know if I'm just showing my age or what, but and part of the reason I wanted to show you this shoe is because it ties back into another project that we're working on. We're working on another book, of course, and another course specifically about shoe design. And what I like about these two shoes, and what we're gonna talk about today, is how you can take a lot of the same elements and create an entirely new shoe, or the same elements with different application and adjustment. So and this is that sort of what I call this absolutely classic functional aesthetic, right? When you look at the parts of these shoes, the heel counter is there, the toe tip is there, and the eye stay is there. These are all the functional elements of a shoe. And of course, you've got the classic waffle. So it's easy to understand why the shoes are there. And I know in some, and maybe that's just me being a curmudgeonly old shoe dog, but when I look at some of the modern shoes and you see all the shapes and patterns going 8 different ways, like, well, what's the purpose of these pieces? And you look at a shoe like this and you understand exactly how and why it's made this way. Now, the other thing about this kind of classic shoe is that these are carefully designed to be 51% leather, and not counting the tongue, and that makes these leather duty, not textile duty. In this day and age of crazy tariffs, you'd rather this shoe be a leather duty 9.5% instead of 20%. Now, what they've done here is it's not actually 51% leather, it's predominantly leather, right? So when you look at the textile and the leather, they might both be slightly less than 50% because of this man-made piece. And when I start to look at this shoe, I wonder if they're doing the same thing. And you have the mustache and the heel counter and the toe tip, and also this eye stay piece. It's a smooth leather. It's not suede, but when I really look closely here, I can see gray backing, which tells me that this is action leather. Now, why they made it not suede. I don't know. I guess that's a design choice. And but this logo here, you'd think it was kind of action leather, but when I just peel it up and look at the backing, I can see that this is a man-made material. So this shoe is following basically the same premise, which is it's not exactly 51% leather, but it's predominantly leather, which makes it a 9.5% duty shoe. Okay. So, again, these shoes have basically the same silhouette, right? And you can see like the midsole, the standing height of the midsole is probably similar to each other. The toe spring, they look similar to each other. Yes, the sidewall comes high, and part of the reason why that covers the edge. And this one is board last, the classic one, and this one, if you peel up the if you peel up the footbed, and we'll try not to damage this, and you can see inside that this is a Strobel. And when you look at this one, you can see, try to see here. Oh yeah, there, it's board lasted, so there's no Strobel stitching. It's board lasted. Okay. Now, again, there's no good or bad about either board lasting or Strobel. This is the classic construction. Now, this is a modern repro, but it's made pretty well to the classic, except for the midsole was molded, not sheet cut. And this, they just gone for a full upgrade. So you can see the profiles are similar to each other, but it's molded. Okay, that's cool. Now, when I look at these shoes, I see exactly the same elements. Now, there's things that are different about this, and we'll sort of go case by case. I mean, the nylon here is absolutely quite classic. This kind of knit knit is actually probably not as authentic as this one is, but anyways, here we go. So when I look at the suede, this is kind of high nap, which is that was kind of the style, right? But see, we've got sort of double stitch. In here, we've got beautiful triple stitch, and then they've added another interesting detail here, which is the stitch line on the inside of the vamp, which I like is a nice detail. The eye stay looks quite similar. The only difference here is that on the debut, they've hidden the tongue attachment stitch just in the throat instead of having a little additional zigzag here, instead of a little box stitch there. Does it save labor or anything? No, because it's still another operation. Doesn't matter. But it is what it is. I do like the fact that the lace is a little tighter weave. This may be authentically vintage, but it's kind of beat. Yeah. Tongue labels are both woven, single color versus double color logo. This tongue has just a simple binding on it, which is nice. And this one is showing that extra, vintage look, just die cut. Now, when I started wearing Nikes, they all had finished edges, and this was in the in the mid to late 80s, so starting in maybe 85 somewhere. So the earlier shoes, I never had bought or wore a shoe that had this kind of die cut tongue. It's cool. So tongue wise, they're basically the same. The die cut tongue keeper again is a cool effect. Now, the heel sort of mustache patterns. I mean, the pieces are there. They're just slightly different shapes. That's neat. And then the extra detail of the perforation. That's a no cost detail. So that's cool. I like to see that. Adding the heel strap onto the end of the logo. That's a nice element. The fact that it blocks the logo is kind of an interesting effect. But okay, cool. This I like. The oversized logo that actually, from a design element, there's a few things going on that's really cool. I do like that it's larger, and that they're playing games with, the vintage logo just sits on the panel and it's not disturbed. But on the new shoe, where it tucks under and then it also hangs over, and then again it tucks under here and it hangs over. So I enjoy that that difference unique. It's quite some flares. Again, it's the same element, but it's just executed different with sort of different graphic. The other thing I like about this other shoe, and you can see now, this shoe is quite simple and well constructed, and what do you look at how beautifully even the stitching is to the edge of the logo. I mean, of course, it's computer stitched to get that accurate, and it's close to the line. You see how close that stitching comes, right to the edge. A millimeter, beautifully consistent. Now on this shoe, you would say, oh, it almost looks like a defect, right? Let's get some light on there. It almost looks like a defect how far the stitching away is from the edge, but you'll notice it's completely consistent as it goes around. So just that extra wide stitching margin, it's a cool effect. Again, these are sort of no cost effects. If you're computer stitching the shoe anyways, and the machine is doing it, so you can have a kind of interesting effect. And same thing on the heel here, on the original Daybreak. There's just one row of stitching. Yeah, and this one here, you've got a little bit more contour, and now you've got 3 rows, and then you've got that extra wide stitching margin. So again, it's a cool effect. Now, on the throat, on the eye stay, they've just followed more traditional single row with a small reveal, just normal sort of stitching margin. But knowing that they've sort of given you a little bit extra here on the toe, extra around the logo, and extra here. And then they've gone back to sort of conventional in the heel. Again, as a designer, these are, that's what I like about the shoe is it's so simple, right? It's essentially an off-white shoe with a black logo. But they've gone and done these extra details that don't cost money, right? To have the logo have these sort of playful graphic change, right? Update to it. And then with the stitching reveal, it's just really cool, nice effect. So as a designer, to look a little closer at these elements and figure out what you can do to make it interesting, right? Now, of course, we got to look at the bottom of the shoe and go, oh yeah, this new one is beautifully sculpted, modern. The design essentially is the same. It's little waffles, right? It's clearly the waffle thing, but this is created around that sort of original die cut. And here we've added the logo, we've added a little stack, a little, this almost look like surf traction where you've got the double stack. But again, it's the same sort of graphic element, but elevated just a little bit. And here you can see there's not much texture on the web. You get that kind of gloss effect versus they've gone ahead and added just a little, medium sandblast to the texture there. You still got the same dimples and squares, and now a nice, clean, logo reveal down there. So again, and nice waisted midsole. And again, I mean, of course, this one is the top of the midsole is straight because that's the technology of the time and the look. And here we've sort of gone to the next level. Not too much, right? We've just got some classic lines. Yeah, this proportion of this big chunk here is maybe not as pleasing. Holding it in your hand or on the wall, I'm sure when you're looking at the shoe on the ground level, that's not. Yes, they put that nice design line there to break it up, but it does look a little big and plain here. Um, hey, otherwise I'd say the shoe is nearly perfect for what it is. Simple design elements, clean, and the stitching elements and the way that the underlays and overlays are stacked. It's a really nice graphic effect. So, okay, so that's it. Again, Nike versus Nike. Which one of these do you prefer? Old versus new. Hey, they're both quite nice actually. I think this shoe was $65. So you know, it'll probably be 80 in a couple of months. If depending on the tariff situation, or actually, we didn't look to see where the shoe was made. But let's just take a quick look while we're at it. What's it say? Vietnam. Okay. And this shoe, good question. Let's take a look. This is made in China. Okay, so I know this shoe I've had for a couple years. Um, that's why the suede is a little faded, and I can see the EVA is starting to turn a little bit yellow. But again, quite nice shoe. Nike debut versus the Daybreak. Again, two beautifully functional, sort of classic looking sneakers, but again, like simple vintage pattern, but this modern one with sort of modern technology and sort of elevated with graphics and these extra simple details. But again, the cost to make these shoes is about the same, right? The make that's into it, but just these extra little details to make the shoe pretty nice. So, hey, folks, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more. We've got a new design book that's coming. Oh, I hope by the end of 2025. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and come on over to the Shoemakers Academy website. There's a lot of great stuff. There's more shoe reviews, and you can learn a lot about the shoe business, whether you want to make shoes by yourself or you whether want to get into the business as a designer, a developer, or a product manager, or if you want to start your own company. So just come on over to Shoemakers Academy. Thanks, folks. Bye.